Welcome back to When Harry Met Board Games, where we feed our people with relatable content and our victory condition is your satisfaction. I'm Harry, and before we go any further, please don't forget to subscribe to our channel and also click on that bell notification. That way when we're doing our thing, YouTube lets you know. Today we have another board game review for you. Today I'm going to be reviewing this game right here, Beowulf the Legend, designed by Reiner Knizia and published by Fantasy Flight Games. I'm going to set the game up, show you a little bit as to how it plays, and then we're going to come back here and hear my final thoughts and grades. So this is what the game looks like set up right here. We have the board. Do not adjust your screens. And no, the board is not damaged. This is exactly what it looks like. It's 3/4 of a board. We have a bunch of tokens and tiles here that we can just organize as such. We have these fame tokens in different values, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 7. And basically these are a victory point that players are going to be acquiring throughout the game. We also have these tiles right here, which represent treasure. And they are ranging from 1 through 4. And these basically are victory points. For whatever thematic reasons, they've decided to split the victory points into fame and treasure. The only difference between the treasure and the fame is that the treasure has a lower range of values on their tiles than the fame tokens do. We also have a bunch of these alliance tokens, and these are actually shuffled face down. And basically on the other side of these, all of these are either fame or treasure values. And again, the fame tokens tend to range higher than the treasure ones. Here we have a bunch of scratches, what the game refers to as scratches. And eventually scratches can turn into wounds. And these wound tokens at the end of the game will count against the players as negative points that they will have subtracted from their score at the end of the game. You have your Beowulf figure here, miniature, and basically this is just to serve to keep track, progress through this track here, which are all the different episodes that make up the rounds of this game. Each player, we have the deck of cards here, consisting of many different suits, which all have either one symbol or two symbols, making it a little bit more valuable. In all of these different suits, we have these special cards, which we set up here on the side of the board. And the special cards are acquired throughout the different episodes in different ways. And each player gets their starting hand. And for the starting hand, first of all, you make sure that each player gets a Beowulf card, which this is what the Beowulf card looks like, this helmet figure here. And this is kind of like a wild card, so you can use it in place of other symbols. And they get one of these, what is referred to as a fighting card, right? It's an axe, and this is a doubled axe, actually, double symbol card that they get. So each player gets one of those, and they also get 5 additional randomly drawn or handed out cards to form their starting hand. So they have a starting hand of 7 cards, each player does. So we are going to play the regular mode. There is an advanced mode. The difference between the regular mode and the advanced mode is that these golden episodes here are all going to be skipped for the regular mode. So the first thing we do is we decide a starting player. So let's just say the player here on the leftmost side is a starting player. And we are going to, by the way, these 2 red markers are very important because they're going to block off some of these spots here, because each major episode has 5 potential rewards, but since we're only playing 3 players, we're covering up the last 2 rewards, so they're not going to be available. So the starting player will advance the Beowulf figure on this track to the next spot. And all the different spots on this track consist of one of 3 different types. There's either the opportunities, or there are the minor and major episodes. And they each play out differently. So first we'll start off with an opportunity here. We have King Hygelac's Court. And each player, starting with the starting player and working its way clockwise, will make the decision of whether or not they want to discard 2 cards in order to draw back exactly 2 cards. So we're going to look at this player's hand here. He'll be the starting player. And basically, we're looking at some of the upcoming episodes and the symbols that will be required. So we have this little horn and this fist symbol. And this player doesn't have either one. He does have a Beowulf card, which is basically a wild card. So this is very valuable to keep. I do have a couple of these cards that have 2 symbols on them, so they're very valuable themselves. But I do not have any horns or fists, so I might want to discard 2 of these. I'm looking at some of the upcoming episodes and some of the more important symbols. I'm thinking it's between these two I might want to keep. So I might actually just get rid of these 2 ships right here, discard them in the discard pile, and then draw 2 cards, okay? And I drew a Beowulf symbol card here, which is again is a wild card, so that's very valuable. And at least I got another of these fighting symbols with two of those symbols. Okay, so the next player here will make their decision, and they've got a few of these Beowulf cards, and they also have a horn, and they have a fist. So they might not want to discard 2 cards, because again, you cannot discard 1 and draw 1 if the rules or the board specifies that it's 2 for 2. So he might want to do that. You know what? He'll discard these 2 cards right here and draw 2 cards. And he drew a fox and fighting symbol card here. Okay, so then this player will go and he's gonna look at his hand. He's got the Beowulf card here. He's got a double horn one, so that's great. He does have a fist one, and another fist, so it might not be that necessary for him. You know what? For the heck of it, he will discard those 2, and he will draw 2, and he's got 2 more fist symbols. So this guy is set up for that future situation to draw more of these cards. Okay, so we're done with that. Now we're going to move on. Again, we move to the next spot on the track, and this is a minor episode, and this one in particular is called Sail to Denmark, and it is a risk episode. And basically the way that risk work is players, starting with the start player and going clockwise, make the decision if whether or not they want to draw 2 cards from the deck to add to their hand, but they need to match either of the symbols that's found on that given episode. So if at least one of those cards matches those symbols or has a Beowulf symbol, which again is like a wild card, then you are okay. But if neither one of those cards matches that symbol or is a Beowulf symbol, then the player will incur one of these scratch tokens. And eventually, 3 scratch tokens turn into 1 wound token, and wound tokens can be negative points for you at the end of the game. So the starting player here is going to look at his hand and he could really use some horns. He's got some Beowulf symbols, but he doesn't have any horns or any fists. So he might want to take this risk. It might be worth it. So we'll flip over the top card, and it's a fox right here. And we will flip over the next card, and it's a fist. So you discard any of the cards that do not match that symbol, but you add the cards that do match these symbols. So this is a fist, which was one of the 2 symbols here. So he is fine. Okay, so the next player will choose whether or not to risk it as well. And they're actually going to choose to risk it. So they'll draw the first card, and it's a double fist. That's amazing. By the way, this is all private. Nobody knows what you're drawing. Or actually, they do know that what you're drawing, because you have to be able to prove that it's that. Okay, and then there's a fox. Okay, so he did get at least 1 card that matched that symbol, so he's good. And then finally, this player is going to choose to pass because they're feeling really, really good. But you know what? Maybe they won't pass. They'll take the risk. Here we go. Oh, a horn. Okay, so the rich get richer. And one of these, which will be discarded. Okay, so we're done with that. We'll advance to the next episode. And this is our first major episode. And this one here is called King Hrothgar's Hall. And there are 3 rewards. The first reward here is King Hrothgar's Blessing, which is an additional card to your hand. The second would be to gain 1 treasure, a tile worth exactly 1 treasure. And the third one would be to draw 2 random alliance tokens. And basically, the players are going to now engage in an auction to see who earns the rights to these rewards. Now, on this particular episode, there's 2 types of major episodes, and this is going to be an auction. You have the ones that have an arrow going straight downward, and these are simultaneous bids. So each player is going to look at their hand, and they're going to try to bid from the symbols or the symbol that matches this episode, which in this case is this horn right here. And basically, they're going to place their cards all face down, and then simultaneously they're going to reveal their cards. Now, the cool thing about this simultaneous bid is that you can put as many cards as you want face down, even those that do not match the symbol, as a bluff, right? Because at the end, when you reveal it, the only cards that are going to be discarded for that auction anyways are the cards that match the symbol or are a wild card. Any ones that do not match will go right back into the player's hand. So it might just be used as a tactic to intimidate and make other players fear or maybe even back off from bidding too high. So this player here is going to look, you need horns, and he doesn't have any horns. So he probably doesn't want to waste his Beowulf wild cards because he knows he doesn't have much of a chance. But you know what? He'll intimidate people by placing 3 of these cards that do not match the symbol face down. Now, this player over here has a lot to offer. He has all of these horns. So you know what? He is going to look, and the horns won't be needed again for a couple of episodes. So he's just going to put all 3 of his horns, try to assure himself the victory. All right, then this player here he's got 1 horn. So he's like, what the heck? Let me give it a shot. Worst case scenario, maybe I might be in 2nd place. All right, so he's got that. So now all the players are going to simultaneously reveal their bid. This player had nothing, so he gets all his cards back. This player bid 3 horns. He's got to spend them. And this player bid 1 horn, so he's got to spend it. So now the player who bid or who won the auction is going to get this number 1 status marker to indicate that they're going to go first. The next player is going to get the number 2 status marker, and then the following player will get the number 3 status marker. So now this player is going to choose which of these 3 rewards they're going to get, and they can have the choice. They don't have to pick anyone in particular. So we're going to look at this King Hrothgar's blessing card, and it says instead of discarding one of your cards showing symbols, retrieve the card into your hand. So this is a great way of using this when you spend a very valuable card, but you don't actually have to discard that card. You get to keep it back in your hand. That's a cool card to have. But for now, we're going to go for the victory points. So this player is going to block off this spot right here, which grants them 2 alliance tokens. So we're going to randomly draw these alliance tokens, and this is hidden information from the other players. This right here is 2 fame, so that's 2 victory points. And we're going to draw a second one. And this here is 1 treasure, which at the end of the game is also a victory point. So there's that. Okay, now the next player, this guy number 2, he's going to go over here and he's going to block the King Hrothgar's blessing, and he's going to get that and add it to his hand. And then finally, the third player will take the remaining reward, which is just 1 treasure right here. And what's interesting is, as you progress through the different episodes, sometimes the rewards are not rewards at all. They're actually casualties. They're bad things that happen to you, and you really want to win those auctions just so that you don't have to deal with those problems. Now, there is a new starting player at the end of every major episode. You have the potential of a new starting player, because whoever wins that auction will now be the starting player going forward, which means they go first for some of the decisions. And also it means that whenever there's a tie for a bid, the tie always breaks in favor of the player closest in the rotation to the starting player. So we're actually going to skip a few episodes here. Well, actually, no. Let's go through this one real quick. This is another risk episode where players can risk to try to get either a fox symbol or a fist symbol. And this guy has a lot of fist symbols. So does he really want to risk it? Maybe he does. So let's do it. We got 2. He's got a fist symbol. So he's already guaranteed to not get any scratches. And he's got this. Okay, so he will add that to his hand. Then the next player gets to make the choice. And he has a fox and 2 fists. He's going to do it. He's going to flip 1, and it's a horn. Not looking good. And he's got a fist. Okay, so that's great. And then finally, the third player in the rotation. He's got a fox, a fist, a couple wilds. Oh, he's got a double fist right here. You know what? Everybody else is risking it. Why not? So he's got this axe right here. And he's got another axe. So he is the first player to fail with a risk. And because he failed, he will draw a scratch token, which right now a scratch token is not a big deal, but every 3 scratch tokens do turn into a wound. Okay, so we'll advance the Beowulf figure to the next major episode, and right here, this roundabout arrow here indicates that it's not a simultaneous action. This is a turn order based auction. And the way that these auctions work is very interesting, because starting with the start player, which is this player right here in the middle, you've got to play 1 card in order. So the starting player actually only can bid 1 card. You can't go all out and try to intimidate your opponents. You can only bid 1 card, and it has to be of the symbols that are here, or a Beowulf card, which is a wild card. So we have the axe or the fighting card, and we have the fist. So he's going to start by playing this fist right here to make the current bid at 1, right? And now, going clockwise, each player can either pass or bid to remain in the auction. But what's interesting about the auction in this game is, first of all, you can only play cards 1 at a time. And once the cards you've played either equal the current bid or surpass it, then you can no longer add cards. So you can't really beef up your auction in order to make people back down and intimidate them. It's not necessarily about having the most or the highest value symbols. So once the card you've played either equals the current bid or exceeds the current bid, you cannot keep on adding more cards to it. But the point is that that card that you played grants you the right to remain in the auction. So you don't necessarily need to surpass the current bid. You just need to be able to play down a card in order to stay in the current auction. So here we go. So this player is just going to play 1 fist in order to stay in the auction. Okay, and then finally this player here, he's going to play 1 card. He's going to play the double fist to increase things and make it a little bit interesting. Okay, so now this player will go, and you still, you can still always back out if you ever feel like it's too pricey for your money. This player is just going to put 1 card here and equal the current bid, which is at 2. And this player here has a double fist, has some Beowulf wild cards. He's looking at the casualty. The casualty, because we have these 2 rewards. Sorry about that. Got to block these last 2 ones here. The one of the options for the reward, so to speak, or the benefits, is actually incurring a wound token and drawing 2 cards, which comes with some good. Yes, you're going to get 2 cards, but also you're going to get a wound, which potentially can be negative points for you at the end of the game. Okay, so this player is going to, you know what? He's going to back out. This player is going to back out. He's going to have to spend his 1. He knows he's going to grab the number 3 priority marker. He knows he's going to be last. And then this player here, he's going to feel less obligated to keep on going now that he knows that he won't be 3rd. So he's also going to back out. He's going to spend that card. He's going to grab the number 2 status marker. And then finally, this player gets to drop out without having to spend any more cards. And he'll still remain with the number 1 status marker. So now he's going to pick his reward, and it's between 5 fame points. Again, the option to incur a wound and draw 2 cards in exchange. Or we have the Beowulf's Daring card, which says, when taking a risk, you reveal 5 cards instead of 2. That's pretty helpful. But you know what? This game is all about the victory points. So he's going to choose to get these 5 victory points or fame points. Then this player, who has the number 2 status marker, is going to choose to get the Beowulf's Daring card and add it to their hand. And finally, this player here will take this one here. They're going to get a wound marker, and they will get to draw 2 cards and add it to their hand. And this is pretty much the way that the game of Beowulf plays. You keep on going through all of these spots here along the track. And again, you have your opportunities where you have the option to gain some benefits. You have your risk, where you can take a risk in order to add cards and replenish cards to your hand. And finally, you have your major episodes, which usually consists of either a simultaneous auction or a turn order auction where players are trying to just remain in the bid. When the game is over, players will count all their fame points, they will add their treasure points, and then they will subtract points based on their wounds. If you've incurred no wounds as a player, you're going to actually get a 5-point bonus. If you only have 1 or 2 wounds, you're actually not going to lose any points. But if you have 3 or more wounds, then each of those wounds will have you deduct 5 points from your overall score. Whoever has the most points after that's all said and done is the winner of the game. Let's get back and hear my final thoughts and grade. So that is how you play Beowulf the Legend. Let's get straight to my grades. First of all, we're going to start off with components. I'm going to give this a B. The components are okay. They are pretty good. They get the job done. I like the artwork and the graphic design on the box cover, on the board itself. This is pretty nice. The cards are okay. The tiles are okay. So again, it gets a solid B. Now let's talk about theme. For theme, I'm going to have to give it a D+. And the reason why I'm going to give it the plus is because the episodes and the references to the Beowulf Legend are cool. They're neat. They're interesting. I'm not really a fan of the Beowulf Legend, nor have I really had any exposure to it prior to the game. So count that or take that with a grain of salt. But aside from that, this is a legendary, fantastical type of narrative that gets played out in just a auction bidding game. That's all this game is. You're going from turn to turn, and you're either making decisions that will prepare you and set yourself up for future auctions, or you're actually participating in the different auctions themselves. So what does that have to do at all with the Legend of Beowulf? Nothing much, really. So again, very abstracted. I'm going to give it a D+ for theme. Now let's talk about gameplay. I think for gameplay, I'm going to give it a B-. It's kind of fun to play. It's a little bit simplistic. Yes, you have there's so many turns to prepare yourself for future auctions. And there's some neat twist to it. And I personally am a big fan of auction bidding. And the fact that there's 2 different types of auctions gives it a little bit of freshness from turn to turn. Not every round you're doing the same exact thing. But again, it's just very, very basic. It's just a straight up auction bidding game. You're just taking several rounds and the board is designated. The board is so superfluous. It only serves as a reference point, really, to look at that event, look how you win that event or that auction, and see what the current rewards for that auction are. But with that being said, we're going to go to novelty factor, and I'm actually going to give this an A for novelty factor because there are some innovations to this game. First of all, this concept of a board, which is just 3/4 of a board. Again, the board has nothing to do with the game. It's very superfluous. Again, other than it being a reference point, they could have used cards for all that, you know, maybe a little leaflet or rule section of the rule book for it. But no, they use the board, and it's nice. Graphic design, again, artwork. But it's only 3/4 of a board, and that stands out, right? It's hard not to notice a board that has an entire 4th missing to it. So I think that's cool, that's neat, but again, not so relevant to gameplay. Now, as far as some innovations that are relevant to gameplay, I like the idea of this game having 2 different ways of replenishing your hand, because you are trying to compete in these auctions, but as the game progresses, you're spending this money in said auctions. How do you get money back? How do you get cards back? And there's 2 different ways that are, you know, unique to one another. First of all, you have the recovery phase, which is a particular opportunity along the track where players, the starting player, draws cards twice, 2 cards for every player in the game. So there's a 3-player game, you're going to draw 6 cards. If there's a 4-player game, 8 cards, and so on and so forth. And you reveal them face up. And then starting with the starting player, you're going to draft 1 card. You're going to go clockwise. Everybody's going to draft 1 card. And then the starting player will go again and draft the 2nd card. And everybody else will go around clockwise and draft that 2nd card. So it's a really cool way of, you know, engaging in this little draft phase prior to some upcoming episodes or some upcoming auctions, and get yourself ready and replenish your hand. You also have what's called the risk, and the risk is really cool because not only do you have these minor episodes all along the way where you can take a risk, right, and draw those top 2 cards, and as long as one of those cards matches one of the 2 symbols on the risk, there's always 2 symbols on the risk, or if the card is a Beowulf card, which is essentially a wild card, you're good. You're fine. As long as one of those 2 cards are that, you're fine. And all of the cards, if both of the cards are match those symbols, then you'll keep those and add them to your hand. But for every card that does not match one of those symbols, you have to discard those cards. And if both cards do not match either of those symbols, then you have to take a scratch. And as the game progresses, you're incurring these scratches, and every 3 scratches turns into a wound, right? And wounds are unhealable. There's opportunities to heal some scratches along the way, but you're never going to heal any wounds. So it's a little bit of a risk, but it's a good way of getting yourself ready. And also, to some extent, there's a calculated risk, right? Because you are spending cards throughout the game, and you can figure out the discard card and discard pile and figure out how many times certain symbols have been played. Also, if players went before you in that rotation for the risk and they drew lots of the symbol cards that are required, you might think that the likelihood of you drawing one is less likely. Vice versa, if players earlier than you in the rotation failed, you might think that, hey, it's bound to come out that one of these symbols is up there on that deck. So it's a really cool, neat way of replenishing your hand and getting yourself ready for future auctions. I also think that the way that the turn order based auction works is really cool and really neat, because most auction bidding games that I play, it's all about increasing the bid, right? And in this game, it's not about increasing the bid. It's about keeping up with the bid and being able to play a card. And as a matter of fact, the game holds you back. It discourages you and actually forbids you to use intimidating tactics. Now, with the simultaneous auction bidding, you can do intimidation because you could bluff and throw out cards that are not even pertinent to the current auction to give the impression that you're throwing down lots of cards and potentially make your opponents back off. But with the turn order based bid, you cannot do that. You can't be like, well, I have 7 of these symbols and I'm going to just put it straight up so you guys know how powerful I am. No, you play one card, and the only way you could play more than one card is if that's how much you need in order to tie or surpass the current bid. And once you've done that, that's it. You got to stop. But if at the beginning of your turn, you cannot add a card to the current bid, then you are screwed. So again, it discourages you from trying to even surpass bids sometimes, because if you, in your attempt to surpass a bid, you might leave yourself with less symbols or less cards to play in the future. So again, just managing that balance of knowing when to like fold them, when to hold them, right? When to push forward, when to back out of an auction. All really, really tight, just like in every typical auction bidding game. But again, with that additional wrinkle of, man, am I even going to have a card to play next round? The players after me weren't even able to increase the bid. But you know what? Here it's my turn, and I don't have another card to play. So I am forced to back out of the auction. I think that's all really, really cool. And again, an innovative feature of this game. And as far as overall grade is concerned, I'm going to give this a B-. It's a pretty decent game. I admit the Beowulf theme or pasted on theme can turn you off, or it can actually mislead players or gamers to thinking that this might be a more thematic game, a Ameritrash style game, combat, conflict type of game. This is an auction bidding game. Perhaps if this game was rebranded with a new theme, I think it actually might be more successful, because again, it does have some really cool, neat features to it as far as gameplay is concerned that are different from some of the other auction bidding games out there, in particular the Reiner Knizia designed auction bidding games. So again, overall grade B-. And that's it for today's board game review. Thank you so much for watching. How about you consider clicking on one of these videos on the screen if YouTube is showing them to you, because they think there's a really good chance that you will like one of them. Also, check in the description down below for a link to my Patreon account so that you can find out how you can support this channel and become more involved with the behind-the-scene process. Research and find a tier that works for you. This is Harry saying take care, everybody. Stay safe, stay healthy, and have fun gaming. Bye-bye.